Hey guys, welcome to Design Duels, a YouTube channel where I challenge other industry professionals to a design duel. My name is Jake Plesh and I'm a freelance illustrator and concept artist in the entertainment industry. In these videos I will find and challenge artists to an art war or a duel, where we'll pick a design prompt together, create that prompt, and then review the process and see what we did differently and try to learn from each other. It is sort of a friendly competition, and if you like, you can leave your comments to decide who you think what the winner was, but it's really more about learning and exposing myself to these true warriors of art to sharpen my own sword and share my experience with you all. I fully expect to get my ass kicked by some of the people that I'm challenging in these videos. Stick around until the end of the video to see who I will be challenging in the future. I am completely thrilled to have Fowler as the first guest on this show. He's an incredibly talented artist. I took his mentorship and I cannot recommend it enough. I learned an astounding amount. We still keep in touch and talk about design. Together we picked the prompt Swamp Dragon Frog, and ahead is our attempts to create that prompt. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this first episode, and enjoy my battle with the one and only Fowler. Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, man. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to this. I can't wait to see what you painted. I'm eager to check this out.
I've been like a kid waiting for Christmas to see what you did here. All right, so as I'm kind of drawing in the background, and as I stated ahead of time, this is a prompt that we both chose kind of together, and we went with Swamp Dragon. I gave you a few options. I was curious, like, what resonated with you on Swamp Dragon? Specifically, was there anything that you were like, this is what I or...
It really it's something I haven't seen a whole lot. I immediately thought of Vagar from House of the Dragon is that kind of nasty sort of dragon. He's like a gecko. He's got stuff hanging off of him. Looks like he's sort of becoming the environment. And I thought that was really interesting. Just something I've seen a lot, and a good opportunity to reskin a little bit, make a dragon that's not such a classic traditional dinosaur with wings kind of thing, but something with different shapes and definitely froggy amphibian type of stuff. But they're just all of these nasty little beastie personalities that come from the swamp that I thought would be fun.
Yeah, interesting, because I definitely I wanted to kind of hit like classic dragon design a bit, so it is a reskin, but I'm trying to do, like, you can see on the screen, like I did a few sketches. First of all, this one I kind of regret not going with, and I left it in here because I thought it'd be worth talking about. But I do the first sketch, and, like, spoiler, but that's kind of the one I end up going with, is more that camera angle.
Okay.
But this one really, I think, was worth doing, especially this little, like, head blow up I did. I don't know how you work. I kind of know how you work, but, like, looking at this side of it for me, I didn't end up using this, but it really helped me, like, work out some of the shapes. Just thinking about it on a different camera angle was, like, surprisingly helpful to just, like, work out, like, the forms and, like, understand things a little more. So this isn't a total waste. I do kind of end up using a lot of this and reapplying it to the other sketch. But at the same time, I do like how that second sketch turned out, and I keep wondering if I should have stuck with that one. But yeah, like, getting back to the dragon stuff, I think we're on the same page with a lot of this. Like, I definitely wanted the swampy frog vibe and, like, kind of the stuff growing off of him, and we'll see that come out as the design progresses. I definitely kind of accelerate that the further we get into this.
This is cool. It's awesome so far. And totally, all those little margin sketches or little sidebar explorations, it's always useful. Sometimes you get something out of that little side sketch that you decide to bring in, whichever design ends up as the winner. But really cool. You really like stretched a lot of energy and action line into this thing, even though, and not to jump ahead to mine, but I also wrestled with how frogs in a lot of ways are just sort of like a little blob that's just sitting there.
Yeah.
They're oftentimes just sort of, that's kind of their energy too. They're sort of funny like that. They look like they just don't care what you think. So nice job making this still have that fun movement and gesture and oh
Yeah.
man.
What kind of put me onto this design, or this camera angle at least, was there was one reference I found of this like African bullfrog, which they're really chunky guys.
Yeah.
And it was like he was sitting on this slope like that with his arms out, and the action, like the flow line, was just so nice on that. I couldn't. That's kind of what drew me to this pick. And yeah, like I'm really curious to see what you did specifically with wings, if you have wings, because again, I was trying to go for like classic dragon in even the literal sense of like people get all up in arms about like this is a wyvern, this is a dragon because of where the arms are.
I have noticed that
But
the wyvern community is
yeah,
very passionate.
yep. And for those who are like listeners who don't know, technically a wyvern, it's like the wings are the front arms, and there's only like two locomotion legs or whatever. So this is more of a correct dragon where like the wings are a separate appendage. But yeah, my struggle with this, and this kind of drove the design in a lot of ways, was I wanted it to look like it could actually fly, but because frogs are so damn chunky, I was like, these wings have got to be like massive and super muscular. And I almost wish I would have done a little more anatomy study on like sort of like those pectoral muscles, because like the wings usually do kind of on real animals like wrap around into the pecs.
Sure.
And I think I could have maybe pushed that a little more to try to like get those muscles looking like they're really connected to the pectorals. I think that would have added like some believability, but I'm happy where it is right now still. But yeah, ultimately I think it was just like the wings made this huge shape because I wanted it to look like it could take off with its big girthy body.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a balance of like, I mean, we've talked about shape design a ton before, but like I wanted to make it kind of like a big empty area without it being boring, and still kind of direct back to the focal point of the head. So like just process wise, kind of jumping into the block out now.
Yeah, here we go. Really cool design, man. And yeah, I painted a few dragons, and it's always that big empty wing like membrane is always, it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. Like exactly like you said, it can be one of those visual rest areas, but it's also like, man, this wing is like 50% of the whole mass of the thing. And
Yeah.
what do I fill all of that with? But I think you really crushed it. Looks cool.
Well, and then big, medium, small, as we've talked about in other conversations before. Like I was like, oh man, these wings. If the body is going to be the medium, so that the wings look doable, they're going to have to be
There you
huge.
go.
So hopefully it's successful at the end. I think it is, but there's something I thought was kind of interesting with this design. And I think, have you seen the D&D movie?
Yeah.
Blanking on like the
Yeah.
like Thumber. I'm gonna screw up the name.
Actually,
He's a
I
big
forgot.
fat red dragon.
That was
Oh.
so funny. I love how it was too big to fly. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I was
But
not
I did
expecting
kind of get like
much.
a little bit after I was done. I kind of noticed some like similarities there, but I wanted it to be able to fly real bad. So that's why again these wings are just enormous.
This is awesome. And again, not to foreshadow too much, but I was worried we would do too much the same thing.
I was too. Yeah.
We super have not so far, and this
Okay.
is so fun and cool and different. So I think this is going to be a really cool, just apples and oranges kind of thing that we're doing here. But
Yeah. Well,
Nice
that's what I was
value.
hoping for. This whole experience, I think, is going to be interesting in that regard because, like, same thing. I was like, it's a frog dragon. How many options can there be? But really, there's an infinite number of options. So, like, I'm really curious to see where you go with it too.
Absolutely. I love this channel, man. This is going to be so fun. I cannot wait to see, what prompts you use, what artists you have on. This is going to be so
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm excited, honestly, like just to talk to different artists and ask, like, I don't know what some of these people like, sort of more prominent people in the industry, like, what are they like just interested in drawing that they're not working on professionally? Like, what are they going to pick? Because I'm going to try to let them drive the ship a little bit on like what the challenge prompt is. So, yeah, I'm really curious just to see like what they pick. And
That's gonna be awesome.
this is kind of a strength for me. I just love drawing monsters. And I know you've drawn dragons quite a bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. This felt like a comfort zone, which is kind of nice. It's comforting.
Yeah,
Really cool, man. So much texture information with your values, but it's like busy in all the right places and less so where you don't want it to take over.
yeah, and that's definitely something that I think pieces have a different level of like linear smoothness to them in terms of like progression. And I guess what I mean by that is like sometimes you start a piece and you go right to the end with like no, like you're not changing your mind. It's like a very direct process. I think
Right.
this one, the least direct process for me was figuring out like the textures and where to put detail, and the color. You can see I'm messing around with the color quite a bit right now. Even right here, I'm kind of blocking in. I'm using colors, but I'm more trying to figure out where to like separate shapes and where to get like the color variants, but not necessarily like I definitely wasn't sold on the colors at this point.
Right.
But I'm keeping my layers separate so that I can, keep changing them around and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, that editability is really nice, but I also get sort of stuck in I don't know. I get to two things I love equally and I get frozen and I end up reverting to like the
Yep.
same two or three colors. I'm really proud of myself this time. I tried something very different.
Cool. Oh man, I'm excited to see that. Like quick question for you too. When you approach color, I've seen your process a bit before, but for me, it's very much like I don't. It's very hard for me to like pick a color and just throw it down and be like, yeah, this is the color I'm going to use. I very much think color is so like reactive and intuitive. Like
Yes,
I almost always put it down and I have to like see what it looks like before I know if it's right or wrong. It's like almost like color theory doesn't have a formula as much as it does. And like there's rules obviously that you can follow or not follow, but like to me it's much more about throwing it down and seeing how it feels. And using that slider to just see like, does this look better? Does this look better? Something weird might happen. You never know.
absolutely, man. It's like being at the eye doctor. Like, is it better now? Better now. Couldn't
Oh,
agree
I hate
more.
that. Yeah.
There's some academic theory you can lean on a little bit, but at the end it's just how does it make you feel and what does it evoke? And it comes down to just a gut check. I try to make it. Oh, that's such a cool eye. Really great.
Thanks. I love drawing. But I worry it ends up being the same eye a bit too much. But like the like alligator crocodile eye is just like it looks so cool in real life. So
Absolutely. That one, it reminds me of a goat a little bit too, which they have
oh
oddly
yeah.
terrifying eyes and
Oh yeah, I definitely went for
yeah,
frog iris. Which, oh my God, if you look up like frog iris variations, there is like literally 30 or 40 like unique shapes. It's crazy.
that's awesome.
I didn't know they had different eye eyes at all. Like I was kind of like, oh, they all have a horizontal eye or they all have like a cat's eye, but it's crazy. I might even put like a little picture up at the end of this video just to show people because like I found one picture in particular that was just like mind blowing.
That's fun. Oh man, the like mossy beard is totally anchoring him in his environment.
Yeah, once I was planning on doing that from the start, but once I kind of hit that, you'll see I start really trying to like where can I put more of this moss stuff. I was trying to like really balance it out with the shapes, but also like yeah, like here I think was a really good idea.
That
Like a
totally
main
makes a
one.
gel. I noticed you have a moss brush. That thing, that's a cool texture.
Yeah, I there's a few different like foliage brushes I use. I don't know. I foliage is always something. It's like it never just works the way I want it to. Even when it's like smooth, it's not as smooth as I was like hoping.
Yeah.
But I definitely think like the method to go with for me is like do the silhouette block out, do the light shapes or the dark shapes and then the light shapes. But um yeah, I do kind of go over it with this like textured a few different textured like foliage brushes. I don't know how you usually do it.
So tough. That's one of those things that I find the more I render it, the less I like it. So it's
Yeah,
this like long journey towards impressionism with
yeah.
things like, yeah, foliage and hair is another one where I try and just make it as quiet as possible.
I think that kind of inspired me. Like, well, to say this, like yes, but I really like getting detail in there, but it's not like stroke by stroke detail. It's like you
Right.
take one brush, throw a bunch of texture in. It's like if the better, the more detail you can get in with like the broadest strokes possible, I guess. Because like if I do start going in and like drawing a single leaf with like a ballpoint pen kind of a brush, then that's where it really falls apart, I think.
Totally.
Um,
Absolutely. You can get really lost in the pixels with that kind of stuff. When it's like a material that has thousands of individual units, it just becomes so noisy that it's all that you can see. So yeah, trying to do it with shapes I find has been helpful for me, like just a highlight shape of the light side of the tree and then a shadow shape so that the leaves aren't really individually there. It just looks like
yeah.
a cloud of, I mean, exactly what you've got going on with the beard, but then just a few little individuals here and there to make it really pop. I think that's perfect. Really
So
nice.
here too, just to get back to the video real quick.
Sure.
I noticed I went back to my sketch and there was like, and I went and looked at the paint. I was like, man, I lost so much energy from the sketch. So I kind of brought back the sketch to try to match, like, warp and match the painting back to like what it was, and I think that was a good choice because it comparing the two side by side, I was like, man, what happened? Like, it looked so much better at one point as the line art, and I know that's something a lot of people struggle with is like, how do you keep that energy through?
Oh
Um,
man, absolutely. I mean, that's like everybody says. We're not alone on that. It so many times I've done a sketch in 10 minutes that I liked, and then spent a week on a painting and realized that I like the sketch better. I mean, it's art nightmare, but that's you're doing the exact thing I try to do to work around that is just always keep looking back and identify what have I lost here? What did I often at times the rendering gets fussier than it might need to be. There's more going on and it loses some of that just space that the sketch left for you to kind of
yeah,
interpret things. And I usually that sort of sends me towards simplicity or trying to make things as impressionistic as I can, but not everywhere. Like actually, what I am loving most about this so far is how you're using texture and detail in such a measured way to send our eye right where you want it. Really cool.
Yeah, thanks. I was definitely like very aware of that through this whole process, especially because having learned from you and stuff, and we've talked a lot about Cedric Prévernet and like other like the brushy hand of the artist kind of stuff. Yeah, I was very aware of that going into this, and I was trying really hard to I get like the suggestive detail without making it too busy or too dead.
Yeah.
Kind of going back with some more texture brush here, trying to indicate some like lighting, but really, like we just talked about, I'm trying hard not to like detail it to death where it doesn't need to be done.
It's so hard to know where the line is on that, but really great. And so much of him is kind of hanging in shadow, which is another helpful thing that dragons just have built in with wings is
Oh yeah,
a lot of it can be hidden behind that wing and it just sort of goes away so that we can focus on the face. So cool.
yeah. That's something like process wise, I think is worth talking about too. Is like it's like almost like the faster you can establish your lighting and know where your shadows are going to be, the smoother the process goes because like you don't have to focus. There doesn't need to be detail in those shadow areas. There can be some like subtle indication, but like you need way less in those areas than I think people usually realize. And kind of on that note, I don't know if you've thought about this way before, but like talking about like rushiness and stuff.
Hmm.
I got a really cool tip from somebody that was like when you want like fuzzy brushier areas, like look at the areas that are closest in value. So like for example on this, and I don't necessarily like do it really in depth on this piece, but like on the wing. Oh, quick aside, I don't want to jump around too much, but quick aside, I just did this like overlay layer with like a magenta and a blue,
Yeah,
and that
I was about to raise my hand. I have a question.
yeah, that has been like I learned it from Trent Kanuga, I think originally,
Okay.
um, and he does it. He calls it like the hue vibration. Get that like saucy vibration.
Yeah.
But it really to me like it unifies the colors in such a nice way. And if you put the magenta where the focal point is, and then you like knock the opacity way down on an overlay layer, it
Oh,
kind of just
cool.
does this really nice like hue variation thing that I don't know. I don't even know like exactly what it's doing technically, but it always helps in pieces like this where you have like a background and you want the character to like stand out nicely from it.
I just real I try to do something similar in theory, but I'm realizing I might that is faster and sort of does it all in one layer. But that's really nice. Like hue variation is one of those just magical little things that make something feel more rich and realistic and draws focus. But dude, this is looking spectacular and we're not even at the finish line. I love what you're doing with
We're
the light
I
too.
think we're
Really
getting there. I definitely cheated, by the way. We kind of talked about, not that I do a complicated background here, but I think we kind of talked about just doing a very simple, like white or whatever background. I definitely was like, I need every edge I can get to beat Hardy here. So I'm going to start putting in some like atmosphere and like detail on the rocks a little bit just to tell a bit small story. But
All good, man. I think it's just right, and no flags thrown on the play on that one. You're good.
so to get back to what I was saying earlier,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
I'm tough. Like the wing you can see he's got like this arm and then like the membrane. That is an area I kind of have a hard line there, but like I was told by a different professional artist, like those are really good areas to kind of get the smudge tool out and like just kind of mess it up. Like you want some of the indication there where like you need that detail or that like form definition, but where values are very close to each other, especially like if they're two different even if it's like two different forms, like an arm and the body or something, like that is a good place to kind of blur it out. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever thought about it that way or not, but
Just in general, and I keep coming back to impressionism. I love that, especially if an area is not a focal point. If you can just sort of chop it up with a smudge tool, turn it into a little brushy turbulence, it just becomes whatever your viewer thinks it should be, which is
yeah,
magic. I think kind of counting on your viewer to be part of the equation was one of the biggest like steps forward for me in my whole journey. And that is a weirdly powerful one that just kind of not completely defined brushy areas are one of those nice areas to like project to kind of complete the picture in your imagination.
yeah, for sure. All right,
There we
so
go.
we're at the end here. I made a little bit of a jump through some concept art birds in there for scale.
Gotta have it. Jake,
Yep.
this is rad, man. That is just beautiful. The texture's awesome. I love how the foliage, it kind of, you can't tell where the foliage and the skin start and begin. It's this nice, like, area. Nice, like, Vagar energy, too. He looks
Yeah.
thoroughly unsympathetic and master of his domain. Really cool, man.
Awesome.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much. It
Stunning.
was super fun to work on. Definitely one of the most fun I've had on a piece in quite a while. So
That's great. Awesome. Oh, crap. Now I have to follow this.
I don't know, man. I'm excited to see this.
All right, man. Tough act to follow. So I really went in quite a different way with this, and which I think is super fun. I went way more frog than dragon, but still more of both. And just here, I'm trying to get an interesting pose because, like we talked about, the frogs and toads just in a lot of ways are this very static little chunky paperweight. Like there's not a ton of movement. So I wanted to
Yeah.
try and get him into sort of a like tree frog Spider-Man pose where he's kind of like leaning on a surface or something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I based everything else around was just mostly frog, and then I'm just adding some like dragon skin, like literally, but also just all of the little shapes and devices that make something feel like a dragon. So I'll definitely also get to like a scaly face with lots of, extra detail around the eyelids, that kind of stuff. But I did not design wings. I went for a like
All
a
right. Cool.
a wingless. I mean, it's essentially more frog than dragon, but I'm really glad we did different stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is looking really cool already. I could see so much in your initial sketch. I don't know if you're familiar with Pokemon, but Greninja is like a ninja frog. I think it's like one of the most popular Pokemon. Period. Like Pokemon did like a poll on what's the most popular Pokemon. I think Greninja might have been number one, but a super cool design. Like I bring that up in like the best way because it does add so much like motion, and like I totally get the Spider-Man tree frog thing was really cool, and I'm glad you did like I picked like the most like chunky frogs I could find for this, and like the tree
Yeah,
frogs I could look at a little bit, but like nature, man, totally different design.
absolutely. And definitely wanted to feel that. I don't know. I feel like I've probably at a few points in my young life picked up a frog or a
Oh yeah,
bullfrog or a toad and throw it at your friend or something. And that weirdly stays with you, that just
yeah,
that texture. They're bizarre little chunky beings. And I really thought that was if I could make my viewer feel that and maybe be a little grossed out by it. So I
yeah.
had a ton of fun with just little froggy fat rolls and stuff, which is just that's fun stuff to paint with value edges and stuff. So just as always, especially when it's a project that's for fun, and our goal is just cool factor and to make this
Yep.
fun and awesome. Just sort of trying to set myself up for as many of those payoff moments as I can, which was a blast.
Man,
And
your shape design and flow is like masterful here. I love the thunder forearms you got going on. I think
I'm a thank you. I am a fan of that. Always trying to make some shape be like iconically big or unexpected, and that also seemed to
yeah.
fit with the vibe here. What's funny is very different designs, but sort of I feel like they have the same personality. Just
Yeah.
I don't know. Frogs always seem like they are unimpressed with you. Just
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Like it's funny you say that. That's part of the reason I threw Frog out, and like I did give you some options to choose from, but like
Yeah.
I was actually kind of hoping you picked Frog, and that was my initial like gut reaction because there is like such a distinct Frog personality. Like I don't know if it's us just humanizing how their faces look, but
That's probably
yeah.
it. It seems like the posture too. They're not
Mhm.
like they're not sitting up straight or anything. They're just sort of comfortable.
I really like. We'll see where you go with it, but I love the that big lump on like the neck is like that distinctive like toads always have it super obvious. And
Yeah.
toads might there's like the ear and then there's like this like lump thing that I think is like I have no idea what it is. It's some sort of like gland or something. Um,
Oh, the thing
I
like
did
behind
think
the
about
like on
yeah,
the temples. I think that's
yeah,
where like not venom, but I know if something eats a toad, it like tastes nasty, and I think it's
yeah.
that.
But I'm glad you included it. I thought about doing that like many times and then I don't even remember why I didn't, but it's such a distinctive feature. I'm really glad you put it in there.
Awesome. I was also going for that big like ribbit gullet, they sort of
Oh yeah.
inflate. I toyed with the idea of that being fire. I even attempted to paint like a little glow within that, like he has
Oh yeah.
smoke or something. I ended up bailing on that, but anyway, I thought that could be my clever overlap of frog and dragon, but I end up liking it just sort of being what it is without trying to force the concept too much. It does end up being pretty frog with horns and spikes and stuff, but I kind of like that. I
Yeah, I
find
think you
myself
pushed.
going more less is more the older I get.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think you pushed the anatomy enough. Like it's almost got this like slightly human torso. Um, like it doesn't just look like frog to me. It looks like there's definitely more there. It's its own thing for sure. I also really like you kind of did. It does definitely give tree frog vibes, but the tree frogs have those like big bulbous like fingers,
Yeah.
and I like the choice of doing like a sharper kind of claw. Definitely adds like a huge intimidation factor where it's like if a tree frog's gonna smack me with like some big bulbous fingers, I'm not really too worried about it.
Right. Yeah, design language consistency. I thought that fit better. I absolutely thought of those tree frog suction cup fingers too, but this kind of seemed to match the horns and all the other spiky bits. And honestly, I needed that to kind of tip this a little more dragonish. If it had had those tree frog fingers, I think I could have been disqualified. But
I think head
that's
size too was a big one. Like frogs have their head is like half the mass of the body almost.
yeah.
But dragon that doesn't read very dragon usually. So I think like even in my initial sketch, I drew it and I was like, ah, that head is way too big, and I had to shrink it down. And I think you found a really good balance with that here too.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just tinkering with in Liquify, is seeing how far to push that. it's weird. Things with a large head, it shrinks them. Like the whole scale of them, I guess it kind of it babies their proportions a little bit.
Yeah.
If you make something's head smaller, it starts seeming more massive. And I got a really nice sense of scale from yours. I think mine is, even at the end, pretty ambiguous if this thing is, can it eat us or can it fit in our pocket? Not super sure, but not sure if I really need to know.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's like something that you would say like that was unsuccessful. Because I mean, like you throw in some, if it is ambiguous in like a successful way, it's like you can infer the scale through external pieces like a tree, and like if you've designed it well in that like ambiguous area, it's like the it'll be believable in whatever environment it's in is kind of what I'm trying to say. It's not
Totally.
like you look at it and you're like, oh, that looks weird if I put a really small tree next to it.
Right.
Oh man, I could watch you do the value party orange stuff all day. Like you make such nice anatomy cuts. It's like still some of my favorite stuff when I watch you work.
Well, thanks, man. That is the whole design was set up so that I could do that because that's my favorite thing is just cutting little edges, defining little weird bumps and wrinkles and muscles, and that's basically what this whole creature is a bunch of little overlapping lumps of clay that we can carve out and sculpt. Then, of course, the trick is once you do all of that description, every little muscle and scale that gets cut out is trying to wrestle with that so that it's cohesive, I guess, or so that it's not just noisy everywhere. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, by the way, my Camtasia zapped when I was recording this, and for some reason, the actual brush cursor is invisible for this part of the
Oh,
page.
yeah.
So it weirdly looks like a ghost is painting at this point, but a glitch. So sorry about that.
No, no, I wouldn't have noticed. Um, I do think too, like we kind of talked about this earlier, but when you and this like blows my mind every time, it's like your line art did look super good. Like there was a lot of like really nice line weight flow. The shapes were all great, but when you do your value stuff, man, it really does like it like gains energy. I know it's like we talked about like it's like almost like the more you render the you like lose some stuff, but like I'm really feeling like the weight to this guy now. The more you're defining those like forms and stuff, like it's just so cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think this is where that texture really starts coming in, or I knew that I had to sell that gross, flabby frog like impression with just how all these little rolls overlap and where like that elbow he has bent a little bit, how he's got all these creases and wrinkles, all part of that thing that hopefully evokes something that reminds somebody of when they touched a frog on purpose or accidentally or something. This part is always where I try and like unify things. Everything has been so cut out and described that it's sort of too much. And it's like taking a step back and instead of rendering all those microforms, those
Hmm.
little third level details like wrinkles, is start thinking of like the big shape, like the cylinder of every arm or, the sphere of his head and just sort of washing over stuff. It's sort of like we make all these muscles first and then we put skin on top of them to try and make it all gel.
That's one thing I really like about this your specific process here though is like you can kind of get in the weeds on like some of the details, but then doing that washover, it's like it's still there, but you compress the value range down, which I think is like an ongoing lesson for me, and I think a lot of artists is like it's almost like the more information you can get across with like the smallest amount of value change, the better. Not always, and you kind of want like a light area, dark area a lot of times, but like I think by doing that, the process this way where you have those little definitions and then you kind of wash over them, it's like you look close and they're still there. There's still like a hard cut, but it's like the value change in that hard cut is pretty small.
Perfectly put. That's exactly it. Just trying to make stuff that's not important sort of sit back and be quiet, like it's there if somebody really zooms in and goes looking for it, but it's not something that's just screaming for attention. Doing some multiply layers at this point, like trying to make directional light more of a thing. Really, a lot like what you did that I thought worked so well is having it kind of stepping out into a beam of light, or maybe the clouds part on your guy because he looks very, very comfortable. But here's where I try and actually shine more of a light on it. Not quite as dramatic. He's not half in shadow or anything, but having like the top of his head catch more light than this long, curvy gullet, and just trying to make it a little more dramatic and three-dimensional.
Do you not to jump ahead, but do you stick with yellow?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm really glad you did because I was just thinking about this the other day. When you look at a lot of like super iconic characters, if it's like superheroes or whatever, yellow I feel like is a really underused like statement. I was trying to think of like just superheroes that are all yellow, and it's like Wasp from Ant-Man and Wasp, kind of sometimes, and then like there's some like villains and stuff here and there, but like compared to like the bold like reds and blues and stuff, or black and white, it's like it's very there's not many. And I really like yellow. It's such a bold color,
Yes.
primary color. Like I'm glad you went with yellow. It's just I think it's underused as like a prime
Thanks,
like color
man.
pick.
I am addicted to making everything cyan, so this is like a recovery move for me because I just have got to do something else. This is like, it's clearly, if I look at my portfolio and squint, I see cyan and occasionally yellow. So this is definitely like my my weaning off of cyan crutch, but no, I love this color. Like nuclear yellow, like just a touch of green in that highlight part.
Yep.
I really like that. It's such a zing, and it's eye-catching. Jake, I've gotten super fond of this recently, but see how I have the navigator up is one of my
Yeah.
handles. Just keeping an eye on that to see, one, it's like, how is this thing gonna look reasonably good at thumbnail size, which is sort of where we're making our whole sales pitch for our art every time we paint something is does somebody want to look closer at this small object? And also it helps that simplification of values stuff we've been talking about. It helps me keep an eye on that. Like, are just the main shapes of light and dark working for this? And I feel like it is, because even very small, I can see the sort of flat top plane of his head that goes up those little horns over his eyes, and then it kind of becomes the dark shape of his eye, which we always want to engage with, and then kind of the rest of it gets a little quiet, like that raised arm, that wrist is coming up into the light a little bit more, but I feel like the rest of it is sort of getting quiet and going away. So that's all part of the challenge of not getting lost in micro details and sort of keeping your eye on the bigger picture. That has really, really helped me.
Yeah, I've it's funny you say that. I've thought about that a few times recently because I've seen other artists like say that where it's like, keep the navigator up or even open up another window on the side that's like super zoomed out. I try really hard to not zoom in too much when I'm doing it, just like keep the whole thing kind of in view. But I'm gonna start doing that too. I think that's a really good point. I've thought about doing it recently, and I don't know why I haven't done it yet, but I think that's huge. I definitely want to give that a try.
That's a good one. That's like my favorite new thing I have learned recently. It helps. And I mean, I think I've been doing something similar just by zooming way out every once in a while for a
Yep.
long time. But, and I've always had the navigator up, which is the funny thing. I just never really thought to look at it or think about it in that way. But really, man, getting into like detail at this point, carving little lines, little ambient occlusion bits where like wrinkles are overlapping, but trying to kind of let it be quiet and sit back. We're pretty close to the end here, just a few minutes, but at this point, just little color punch ups. I experimented a little bit with some skin patterning because this really bright yellow seemed to, it made me think of like a poison dart frog, or some kind of alarm warning color. But I ended up just sort of, it added more busyness than I wanted to, so I stuck with less is more. This was like a big victory for restraint for me, and it just kind of felt like it was doing okay without it.
I
But
like
a little,
the purple eyes too. It's like you had like green there for a second. That probably would have been my like intuitive pick, but I like purple a lot.
green seemed somehow too benevolent, and I wanted
Yeah.
him to feel unambiguously villainous, and make those maleficent horns kind of fit. But that's again like such a, just you have to see it and tinker with the hue saturation slider until it's like, yep, that's my guy.
I like how dark you left the eye because it's a obviously a focal point. Um, but it's a really nice like shape, and like looking at the navigator, I can see like there's a really dark spot right there that contrasts really nice.
Totally, that exactly the idea there is leave it something dark with all this relatively lighter yellow all over the place. Let's
Oh
see.
man.
So this is sort of like the overlay thing, but I guess doing it in multiple layers. Like I just wanted a bit of extra heat on that top surface. And I love how this reacts with yellow. It just makes it so, I don't know, it's almost blown out how bright it just adds heat. And then
Yeah.
on lighten layer, I'm doing a little bit of bloom stuff just to push that stuff back into the light even more, and just to give the figure, like the overall silhouette, something other than just fading to black. But that's pretty much it, man. Finished Dragon Frog.
Oh man, it's phenomenal. I can't get over like just the shape design is my favorite part.
Thanks,
Like
dude.
just some really nice like flow. And like not like basic flow. Like it's not like it's just it's easy to do like all the lines are pointing to one spot, but you have some really nice like curves that are kind of playing in and out.
I appreciate it. That's it. Finished product. This was fun,
Okay.
man. I can't believe how I love both of them, and they are so different. That's so cool. I'm so glad we didn't just do the same thing.
Just wanted to like take a moment to like review the process and see if there's anything that like not to be like pompous, but that you would say like you would do differently having seen my piece, and I'll kind of do the same thing. Yeah, like I guess is there anything you would have done differently
Absolutely.
like, afterwards? Or are you happy with it? I mean, like I think yours is incredible, so it's like I don't think it needs changes or anything.
Yeah, I mean yours. So much incredibly gorgeous detail to dig through here. Like seeing them side by side, I went with less is more. That was kind of a choice, but there's just so much gorgeous, eye candy levels of detail and complexity to look at with yours. You can even go into the shadow areas and find cool stuff to pick out. So yeah, I am wishing I had gone a little bit more is more, a little bit maximalist, but that was also kind of by design. So I don't know. It's such an apples and oranges thing, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's funny because like you said, like with some of the textures on mine, and I'm really happy with those, but with like just form and like light and like kind of the value cuts, like and this is like on all your pieces, but the anatomy, like the little folds in the skin and stuff, it's just so believable. Like it just looks so solid. And like you could easily lose that with a ton of texture, and I don't think it would have the same impact. Just the shapes and the flow, like right off the bat, like 10 seconds into your drawing, it looked really nice. Like you didn't need all that like texture interest kind of like cool paint job stuff to sell it. And I think like moving forward, if I were to do mine again, I would try to do a little more work up front on that stuff, which I think is always, it's never a bad idea. That's like a lesson I think we as artists learn over and over again. But yeah, that's definitely kind of my takeaway from this. And I need to use more yellow, I think is the other thing. Yellow is such an underused color.
Absolutely. I agree. I will reach for that more often now, when appropriate. But totally, man, this was such a great learning experience and so cool to see these side by side. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, so no, thanks again for doing this. This is like just an absolute blast for me. I can't wait to do this with other artists. If you ever wanted to do it again with a different subject or the same subject,
yeah, man,
I would totally draw more dragon frogs.
No, this is a blast. I cannot wait to see what you post next, man. This is going to be a very fun channel, and you've got your work cut out for you. Can't wait to see who you bring next.
Yeah, and I'll talk about it at the end of the video, but I do have some people that are confirmed, so we'll get into that later. But I guess like final note for this, we're not gonna like declare a winner here or anything, and it is kind of apples to oranges in my opinion. I think these are both great pieces. I want to pick yours, but we're not gonna officially say that. I think yeah, if anyone wants to kind of like declare a winner in the comments, go for it. But it's kind of a friendly competition, and it's more about learning than winning. So we'll move on from there. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I had a ton of fun doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Huge thanks to Hardy Fowler. Please check out his YouTube channel at Digital Painting Studio. I'll leave a link in the description below. And some future guest announcements. In the next couple months, I plan on doing more of these with Lauren Brown from Magic the Gathering. She's an art director there and a phenomenal person that I've had the pleasure to meet, as well as Chris Anderson, who has worked on the heavy metal comics. Really excited to do this with those guys, and if you want to see more content like this, you guys know the drill. Thanks.